following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Handoff middle. First down. Touchdown! And listen to the Cougar Nation.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Cougar Nation, what is good? Welcome in to another edition of Cougar Nation, and this is a special edition, Cougar Nation, because it's not every day we're taking your calls, reacting to significant news on the recruiting trail, but that's exactly what we'll do. Of course, we're talking AJ Dybansta. We're going to talk some men's hoops. We're going to talk some football. We were just at BYU football practice, media availability, had some interviews. We'll give you the latest on what's happening in the football program. Loaded show, Mitch.
It is, and you can be part of this show over the next hour. 801-575-8255. Load up the phone lines because, as we always say, this show is for you, Cougar Nation. Every Monday night, we're taking your phone calls. 801-575-8255. And the question tonight, what is your reaction what was your reaction when number one recruit AJ Dybansta signed with BYU and made it official? Let's share our takeaways right here on Cougar Nation.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
I'll start, Mitch. My first takeaway was this was truly a landmark moment for BYU basketball. They've had some big recruiting wins in the past. Let's not forget the Lone Peak 3. Further back, Sean Bradley was a significant deal as well. But this, to me, is on a whole nother level. We had a fun segment on Cougar Sports Saturday last week, which if you love this show, we do another show every Saturday, noon to 3, Cougar Sports Saturday. We did a top 5 of the most significant recruitments in the history of BYU athletics, and you had AJ Dybansta as number 1. This is a future likely number 1 draft pick in all of the NBA down the road. That's where he's currently projected in that 2026 NBA draft. And when you get a guy of this caliber who has this type of buzz, it is a landmark moment.
It truly is. And BYU, my takeaway, Matt, they just won the lottery because any school that's a blue blood could come up with the money that's been reported around AJ Dybansta. NIL was going to be there for AJ at any school. You get a chance to get a guy that could be a number 1 draft pick in the NBA. Any school is going to find a way to get that guy from an NIL perspective. And only the few are able to reach those levels. And BYU was fortunate enough to have the resources and ability to have the NIL to maybe have a foot in the door. But beyond that, though, and I think the larger conversation, I think a lot of this casual social media conversation forgets. We've talked about it a lot, but Kevin Young, from the moment he arrived, he's laid out a vision that he could get the highest level of prospects at BYU. And I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, I think the recruiting will go up, but still there's a ceiling. Can he get the top 30 guys like a Colin Chandler like once upon a time? Can he get those guys? Yeah, sure. He could probably get those guys more often because of his NBA pedigree, but the one and dones, the 5 stars, probably still not going to get that guy at BYU. And he did. And he's gotten 2 guys, Yegor Demon and AJ Dybansta, before he even coaches in a Big 12 game. BYU won the lottery. And, because AJ, at the end of the day, you could sell out everything to him, and he could have picked anyone in the country, and that school's going to take him onto their roster. So you got to have an incredible program, an incredible structure and organization. BYU had that, and they get the nation's number 1 recruit. It's a big deal.
My other takeaway, Mitch, and this kind of comes on the heel of what you just said about Kevin Young, I completely underestimated Kevin Young.
Yeah.
When he sold the vision on day 1 of being the best place in the country to develop players for the NBA, I thought that was a nice tagline, but also kind of a pipe dream, considering the limitations or the perceived limitations that BYU basketball has had throughout its history. I just felt like, you need to have a proof of concept before you start to sell to a guy like AJ Dybansta. Like, that's great in theory that you can sell your experience in the NBA, But is that going to translate immediately? But it has. First it was Yegor Demon. Now it's AJ Dybansta. That message is translating, and I completely underestimated Kevin Young and his ability to deliver on the recruiting trail. Because that was, when he was hired, Mitch, everyone thought, oh, the experience from the NBA, like this is a slam dunk, but is he going to be able to recruit?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know if he's going to be able to recruit. I think we can confidently say
yes.
Kevin Young can recruit.
No question. And I think that he would even admit that, with the lines blurring between the NBA and college basketball, it's helped him to where he can kind of hit the ground running. If this was pre-NIL college basketball, maybe it's a little bit tougher of a sell at BYU, even with the NBA connections, because, as we know in the past, schools were paying guys. It just wasn't above board. It wasn't out there in the open. Now it's out in the open, and if you want to become a player nationally and get these players, you can if you've got a robust NIL collective, and you've got Ryan Smith, the Utah Jazz owner, coming out and saying he was not part of it. He went out on X and said he was not part of it, and I know he's got those Hollywood seats right next to BYU's bench, and look, he's a passionate BYU basketball.
Jack Nicholson seats.
Right, he's a passionate BYU fan, but I thought, he's going out on the record and saying he wasn't part of that, and BYU's collective was ready for the moment with Kevin Young. And I don't think, Kevin Young told us too in his office over the summer that, NIL wasn't like, he kind of had to educate himself a little bit. He talked with Billy Lang from St. Joe's to really get an idea of what he needs to ask when it comes to NIL. But, when he went down that path and spoke to guys like Brian Santiago and BYU's athletic administration, he heard what he wanted to hear, but he also laid out a vision that it just inspired people even more, because I think a lot of people in the booster scene, they don't want to just throw money at like, oh, this is the 200th guy in the rankings. He's a 3-star, but we got to overpay to get him because we're that desperate. Like, if you have a coach that says, I'm going to get the number one guys in America, I just need this, this, and this. I mean, that's kind of what it felt like, where Kevin Young's like, I will get these guys to this place, but I need this and this. And the boosters delivered this and this financially, and then Kevin Young's done everything else. It's remarkable stuff. And BYU's commitment financially to this basketball program has been impressive, because I always point to that support staff. It's so impressive to watch, like even on Saturday night against Wyoming, you're watching BYU's bench at the Delta Center, 15 personnel deep on the coaching staff. Wyoming had like 4 people. And again, and you just remember 20 years ago, that was a conference mate. And the gap that BYU has, they're keeping up with their power conference peers, and now they've got a head coach that leads them into an era where they feel like anything's possible. And I think that's what's exciting for BYU basketball, Matt, is that, like, who knows what it's going to lead to with the Dybansta on the on-court product. But the feeling of like you can do anything in college basketball now, it feels real now. And I think Cougar fans are excited about that feeling that they can be among the best of the best in the sport, which is a feeling they never felt.
I think I speak for a lot of BYU fans, Mitch, when I say there was always that what if BYU went all in.
Yep.
What if they had the right guy? What if they could compete financially? Let's call it what it is. Mm-hmm. You had to be able to compete at a certain level for AJ. Now, I would maintain adamantly that finances were not the number one reason AJ came to BYU.
Because he could have got it anywhere. Any school's going to deliver.
Exactly,
right.
100%. He was going to get paid at Alabama, Kansas, Kansas State, North Carolina, wherever he wanted to go, he was going to get the money. What it came down to was Kevin Young and his vision. Because we've heard it from current players, we've heard it from Yegor, we've heard it from AJ, we've heard it from a lot of people that, in Kevin Young's words, my program, it's not hypothetical.
Kudos to you, by the way, asking that question, because that's become a viral sensation now.
Well, thank you. I mean, I can't take any credit for it because
but it was a good question. If it doesn't get asked, then we're not hearing that great soundbite.
Fair. But Kevin Young, I think the other thing we need to give Kevin Young props for is this dude is a real dude.
Yeah.
He's a genuine, likable guy. And I think that is really resonating with kids these days because you're getting sold all these wondrous visions financially and the NBA, and then Kevin Young comes in and he tells you how it is. And I think that is really resonating with people. It's resonated with me as an observer of BYU athletics. When he talked about, Mitch, his path to where he's at and how he's had to work hard for everything he's gotten, and he's just told himself all along the way, nothing's going to stop me. Why can't we win a national championship? Why can't we land the number one player? Like, who's to say we can't? And he continues to break through these walls, and that's what's so exciting about BYU basketball is for the first time, Mitch, I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, for the first time, the sky is the limit. There's no limitations. And that is a thrilling place to be for BYU basketball.
801-575-8255. Call in and share your thoughts on AJ Dybansta signing with BYU. And I thought that was a great tidbit, too, that him and his father, Ace Dybansta, they kept that thing like a steel trap. Him, Dybanstas, and Kevin Young, that was a deep state secret that BYU had him already on board, signed. And it was always interesting, too, when it was announced, when AJ said that he was going to commit in December, you thought to yourself, okay, that's great, but you're still going to have 4 months until signing day. Well, obviously, it was official, it was on the books, and I'm curious to hear more from Cougar Nation, 801-575-8255. What was your reaction to AJ Dybansta's signing? I think another takeaway that I had as we wrap this up on this segment one is that AJ and his father Ace were bought into the moment Kevin Young entered the conversation that BYU was about the pros. And, I remember going down to Utah Prep and Ace Dybansta telling me when he was laying down some of the schools and his thoughts on some of those programs, Kevin Young is all pro. He's all business, and he's a pro's pro. And, that message resonated. And to your point that Kevin Young's likable, I think that kind of shines through in just some of the little moments we saw with AJ and Coach Young last Wednesday at the Fresno State game. AJ did an impromptu press conference, and Kevin Young's just like, hey, you got to go to class tomorrow, get those classes done, and the next thing we know, he's at the Delt Center the next day. It's AJ's world, and we're just living in it, Matt.
It's a great place to be, though, Mitch. And BYU basketball, the future is bright. Their recruiting is picking up. It's kind of weird to say that you'd think after the commitments they've had in this class, they'd be a top 5 class.
Absolutely.
Still on the outside looking in.
Number 11, it's like, give me a break. You get the number 1 player in the country. It's like you got to be top 3 guaranteed.
You have 3 players in the top 150.
Yeah.
And with the number 1 player.
And that's the thing, too. Dybansta and Xavion Staten. And then if you bring back, Keba Keita, you bring back, like, if if you're Cannon Catchings right now, and Cannon's hitting a little bit of a freshman wall at times offensively, but like, if you're him, and I know he's projected in some mock drafts as a late first rounder, don't you want to maybe run it back one more year? Because you're going to be with Dybansta, where all the NBA eyes every single night are going to be on this team. Like, BYU's getting a lot of eyes with Yegor and Cannon. But this is another tier. This is where you're talking about a prospect who could be viewed as the next superstar of the NBA. The guy that could be the best player in the NBA in 7 years could be AJ Dybansta. And it's just a different level of prospect where every single night, Provo and wherever he's playing are going to have so many eyes on him. And you just wonder if that could maybe pull Catchings to maybe run it back for one more year. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of basketball left to be played, and if he tears it up, by all means, go to the pros. But I just think there's a lot of excitement and a lot of versatility and optionality that Kevin Young can explore with his roster next year.
Let's take a break. Let's discuss that on the other side. The just future possibilities of this roster with AJ coming in. We'll take your calls as well. 801-575-8255. Back in a moment.